peeps. Beep, 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 beep. How are we? Son. Chai latte. Some of you will be familiar with the name, when I say it, Patrick Harvie. This is a somewhat confused man who works, I think, for, the Scottish Parliament. He's a co-leader of the Greens, for God's sake, right? But you've heard of him, Harvie, yeah? Patrick Harvie. He's done some ridiculous things about that. I saw him the other day in a picture, wrapped in a trans flag, stood by a bike, looking utterly ridiculous. And apparently this is the sort of nonsense he gets up to. He's a bit of a blowhard. He's always telling women what they should be doing and, thinks he speaks on behalf of gay people, and he's really got his tongue rammed up the LGBTQ bumhole. So that's Patrick Harvie, right? Okay. If you don't know him, for those of you, US, Canada, Singapore, wherever you're watching from, right? So there's an article in the Scotsman, which I came across, which is rather interesting. I know nothing about Scottish politics. Sorry, Marion, and others. Nothing, really, apart from what, the crap they get in when it comes to free speech and the trans stuff, because Scotland used to be home of the Enlightenment, blah, blah, So we've got this guy, Patrick Harvie, and there's an article here written by somebody called Connor Matchett. And there's a picture of Connor there. He's a very smiley fellow. Another one. We like the smiley fellows. Now, the Scottish Green co-leader has said, Fergus Ewing and Robin Harper are old men whose generation hasn't moved on. Quote, unquote, Patrick Harvie. Patrick, I've seen pictures of you, matey boy. And I think defining you as a young man might be a push. Don't you? So, they're all a generation who hasn't moved on. That's interesting. I wonder what you mean by a generation who hasn't moved on, and what you mean that can't recognise men from women and women from men. Is that what you mean? That a generation hasn't moved on. What do you mean by that, Patrick? Can you please explain to me? No. What he means is people that don't agree with him and is like a particular nonsense, you see. Nonsense. So he's labelled veteran SNP and Scottish Green critics of his party part of a generation that simply hasn't moved on. Oh, it's a simple thing, is it? The Scottish Green co-leader reserves special criticism for long-serving nationalist MSP Fergus Ewing and former minister Alex Salmond. It comes as the SNP continues to debate the Bute House Agreement, the cooperation deal signed between it and the Scottish Greens in 2021. Amid concerns from backbenchers that the coalition has become a drag on the party's fortunes. In more ways than one. Hey, Harvie? Isn't there a picture of Harvie with some person that you shouldn't be with? Chief among these public critics are Fergus Ewing and Kate Forbes. When asked for his opinion of the two SNP MSPs, Mr. Harvie said, I think very different things about the two of them. We'll probably agree and disagree about a range of different things, but one of them is bright and articulate person and the other is not. Pressed further, he added, the other is Fergus Ewing. He represents, quote, a generation that simply hasn't moved on and come to terms with the reality of what the climate emergency requires all of us collectively. I don't think that's true of Kate Forbes, despite the fact that I will fundamentally disagree with her on certain issues. For example, in the way that she's raised some of the issues around HPMAs, I don't think that was in a knee-jerk reaction of just saying that this is a bad idea and it shouldn't happen. He later added the former Scottish Green leader Robin Harper's defection to Labour was disappointing and said there seems very little reflection on the fact that he was willing to be candidate MSP and effectively co-leader of the pro-independence party. When asked if Mr. Harper was in the same bracket as Mr. Ewing, Mr. Harvie said they absolutely shouldn't be, before adding that Harper's views are being used as a proxy by others whose real objection is independence. Mr. Harvie accused internal SNP critics of being the reason behind the party's struggle in the polls, as it also battles the ongoing impact of Police Scotland's investigation into party finances. Because this, we should be cranky, They're peering into her orifices, aren't they, seeing if anything's wrong. Anything's wrong. Asked why there were critics of the deal within the SNP, Mr. Harvie said, I think there are some in the SNP who need to go back and reflect on the experience of being a minority government in the last session, the toxicity of that, and recognise that the public respond well when politicians find common ground and look to cooperate and build consensus. Dear God. Consensus politics. Ooh, Mr. Harvie. What are you doing, Patrick? Right. We know, don't we? Yep. Even looking at the SNP's fortunes, people who are stirring up hostility within the SNP's ranks, they should be asking themselves whether they have far more to do with the SNP's polling numbers at the moment than any individual policy delivery. Right? So what he's saying here, this is clever, right? Okay? This is why this article went, read me in public to me, right? So the first one is, just to take us back just a little bit, right? I think there are some in the SNP who need to go back and reflect on the experience of being a minority government in the last session, the toxicity of that, and recognise that the public respond well. So the public respond well when politicians find common ground and look to cooperate and build consensus. Well, first off, I don't think that's a really good idea at all. I think the public responds well when they see a leader, Mr. Harvie. I don't think you know what you're doing. When they see a leader, don't they? That's when they tend to respond well, not when you wibble about, screaming about consensus. They go, right, we're going to, the leader will, bureaucrats will go, yeah, we need to find a consensus. Let's sit down in little dark rooms and not tell anybody what we're doing. The leader will go, right, Britain, that way. That's the leader. And I think you'll find that the British people respond very well when they see a leader that hits upon a common theme from which a majority are able to extract some kind of interest, and therefore use that interest to win the election and drive us forward. It's interesting that Harvie should say that, isn't it, Patrick? And then the next one, even looking at the SNP's fortunes, people who are stirring up hostility within the SNP ranks, stirring up hostility? Who's been doing that, Harvie? Right? They should be asking themselves whether they have far more to do with the SNP's polling numbers at the moment than any individual policy delivery. Now, this coming from the first paragraph that I just read is equally fascinating. So what's being said here is, first paragraph, you don't need a leader, you just need a consensus. Second paragraph, the reason we don't need a leader and just need a consensus, but aren't getting there, is because of individuals, not because of an overall strategy. Read it. Do you get it? Right? This is an ideologue in action. It's rare to see them out in the open so exposed. So, yeah, we need a consensus. Oh, and those people that won't allow us to reach that consensus, they're the problem. Can you see what it is yet, folks? Those people that won't let us reach consensus, they're the problem. Absolute, pure, dyed-in-the-wool socialist ideologue. That's what it comes across as. Big state, never mind the people. Patrick Harvie, yeah, I think you're a dangerous man. Also, because you're a nutter, aren't you? You're one of them. Yep. You're always being ridiculous around that. Just to finish the article, he also labelled Alex Salmond a discredited figure, and the Alba Party, now led by the former First Minister, as an ego-trip party, stating an electoral pact as proposed by Mr. Salmond would be absurd. So, your consensus then, is it? Patrick boy, your consensus. The subversive nature of the likes of Patrick Harvie there, illustrated perfectly by the simple idea that in that article, what he says is, we need a consensus, and the people that won't let us get the consensus that we want, we don't need to deal with them. They should shut up, because it's them that's costing us the votes of the people. You're an idiot! Right? Go and have a look and tell me what you think, because that just jumped out at me. I'll see you later, folks. Goodbye.